Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to quickly introduce myself. I'm Nur Intan Putri Ayuni. I'm from English Education and I'm one of student at Maritim Raja Ali Haji University. The topic of my presentation is about evolution of L2 motivation in higher education by Aliha Al-Huri, Royal Commission for Jubail and Yanbu. The focus of my presentation is on to investigate how the L2 motivation evolves over time in higher education. A motivational intensity questionnaire was developed test for stability and validity, and then administered to a sample for 145 first-year male students studying in foundation year of Jubail Industrial College, a higher education institution in Saudi Arabia. Alright, I have divided my presentation into 15 main parts. Here's the outline of my presentation. The first, I will start with the introduction. There are theoretical framework, motivational higher education, and the Saudi context. Second, I will explain about motivational intensity. Next, I will explain about material and methods that are participants. Then, I will describe about the present study. Next, I will explain about instrument. 6, I will explain about procedure. Then, I will explain about the discussion about this investigate. And lastly, I will explain the conclusion of this investigate. I will take 15 minutes of your time in this afternoon. If you have any question, please feel free to interrupt me. Okay, first of all, I'd like to look at introduction. Motivation is a subject of interdisciplinary interest, cutting through such diverse fields of knowledge as education, psychology, sociology, economics, and political science. The first theoretical framework, the approach adopted here to examine L2 motivation focus on its evolution, how it changes over time. This is because high motivation may look like a stable attribute of one learner, while low or lack of motivation might appear a characteristic of another. This knowledge may allow teachers to expect typical motivational patterns and accordingly adjust their motivational effort and teaching methodology. Second, motivation in higher education. Part of this temporal dimension is how motivation evolves over the years in higher education. One might be tempted to believe that the higher education student is naturally more motivated than a school child. 3. The Saudi context. Because the current study was conducted in Saudi Arabia, this literature review will focus on the studies conducted in the Saudi context. Motivation studies conducted in the Saudi higher education context generally focus on a number of issues other than the microtemporal aspects. From the above review, it is clear that there is a gap in studying L2 motivation in terms of its evolution over time in Saudi higher education. This study is an attempt to fill this gap. However, this study will approach this issue from a different perspective, namely motivational intensity. Alright, the second point is about motivational intensity. According to Gardner's integrative motive, L2 motivation encompasses three components. 1. Motivational intensity or effort. 2. Desire to learn the language cognition. And 3. Attitudes towards language learning or affect. The next point is about a present study. The uniqueness if this study stems from the fact that it addresses an area that has not received sufficient attention. To be more specific, the current study will examine the motivation of higher education students in terms of the following two research questions. The first, is there a differences between one semester and two semester freshmen in reported exam procrastination? And 2. Is there a difference between these two groups in reported autonomy in studying and practicing the L2 outside the classroom? The next explanation is about material and methods. There are participants. The participants, 145, were male freshman students of an elementary to pre-intermediate level of proficiency and with an age range of 18 until 20. After successfully completion of this first year, they qualified to process to their technical or business majors. The first group of the participants, 86, were their first semester and the second 59 in their second semester. All participants were in their first year studying either English alone or both English and mathematics. The fifth explanation is about instrument. Due to the scarcity of studies that tested motivational intensity, a new instrument was developed in order to measure exam. Procrastination. First research question. The instrument included items about the time the participants first started preparing for their test in the semester of this study. Finally, these participants were not sure whether the items were concerned about the reason or the habitual amount of their study time. To clarify this point, the word usually was added and underlined in order to stress that the required answer was the usual amount. The sixth explanation is about procedure. The teacher of each class of the foundation year was asked to choose 4 students. The teachers were instructed to choose one student they considered above average, 2 average students, and 1 below average. Finally, very few participants didn't go beyond the first page in answering the questionnaire, and so they were excluded. Leaving 145 questionnaires for the analysis. Let's move on. Okay, now let's move on to the next explanation. Is about statistical analysis. There were 2 scales types in the questionnaire. For the first types, the response were coded as follows: never, 0, seldom, 1, usually 3, and always 4. For the second types, I don't was coded as 0 and the other anchors were coded into increasing numerals because the instrument was concerned with motivational intensity, which implies persistence and consistency. It was decided to code irregularly as 0 also. Okay, let's move on to the next material is about result. There are procrastination items. There were three procrastination areas broke by the instrument: preparing for the weekly quiz and preparing to offer each of the two major exams. the participants had before study. Alright, after that, I will to go to the discussion. The result of this study seemed to lend some support to the other student studies reviewed about that painted a gloomy picture where there is a pattern of motivation to decline over time. Alright, I can finally say that the conclusion of this investigate and this explanation is this paper has attempted to investigate the macro-temporal dimension of L2 motivation in higher education. The findings might be interpreted as a confirmation of gloomy picture uh, of motivational decline, or in a more optimistic light, where learners formulate goals that are more realistic. The consistency of the cover result with others in this area appears to lend support to measuring motivation thought. Motivational intensity, when operationalized in terms of voluntariness and habituality. Okay, that's all. The concludes my presentation. And now I welcome your questions. If you have any question, I'm ready to answer them. Does anyone have a question? Okay, if you have not a question, I will closing my presentation. Alright, that's all the time I have for today. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.